Okay. Okay, so here we go. We are reading, I'm reading on the screen here or on the book, page 289, verse 22. Okay, so Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. Okay, so we're leading up to the passing of Joseph. It says he lives 110 years, and we want to show that Joseph is gets the greatest blessing, which is nachas from his children. Verse 23. Joseph saw children of a third generation born to Ephraim. Also, the sons of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were born on Joseph's knees. What does it mean, born on Joseph's knees? Rashi says, okay, so he was the sandak. He held the baby when held the baby there in the breast. Maybe that was what it means. But Rashi says, Kitargumai. Look at the Aramaic translation of the Torah of Onkelos, and he says, Itialidu. I don't know why he says that. Kitargumai. Itialidu, I thought means give birth. But Rashi says, Gadlan vein birkav, they grew up between his feet. In other words, they were raised in his household, right? So they went to visit grandpa, which is always a good thing. But we have here a distinction. It mentions both the sons of Ephraim and the sons of Manasseh, right? Third generation born to Ephraim. Also, the sons of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were born on Joseph's knees. So I don't know, help me out. This may be a fourth generation, right? Depends how you count Joseph, right? You have the sons of Machir, son of Manasseh, the son of Machir, son of Manasseh. So you have Manasseh, Machir, and their children. So would you call that a third generation or fourth generation? Fourth. So I think in the beginning he says Ephraim. To Ephraim he saw 3 generations. To Manasseh he sees 4 generations. I think that's what it means. Either way, Manasseh he sees 4, right? Oh well, yeah. Either way, to Manasseh he sees 3, including him as 4. So that shows how Joseph is in Egypt, and he's getting, he's raising his children. His children are growing up with him. Beautiful. So, go ahead.
Just come to question. That's quite a contrast with Jacob, because Jacob doesn't recognize Manasseh.
Right.
And he raises him between his knees. I think he's directly responding to his father, not knowing who his own children are.
Right. So going back to that story, you're taking us back to that story. Going back to that story in the beginning of the portion of Vayechi, is that when Joseph hears that his father is sick, right? If we turn back to page 271. And so Joseph hears that his father is sick. So Joseph takes his 2 children to go visit his father, go visit Jacob. And they have a conversation, father and son, Jacob and Joseph have a conversation. And then on page 271, on verse 8, it says, then Israel saw Joseph's sons, and he said, who are these? Okay. And Joseph said, verse 9, and Joseph said to his father, they are my sons whom God has given me here. He said, bring them to me, if you please, and I will bless them.
And that's a shocking thing that he doesn't recognize.
Right. So the simple interpretation is he doesn't recognize them. Who are they? He's getting old. Now, it doesn't say he's very old, but it does say, let's see, it says he's getting sick. Let's see what it says. Yeah, it doesn't say he was blind. When it comes to Joseph, when it comes to Isaac, and Isaac wants to bless his children, it says, Ve'inei Yisrael kavdu mizok, and the eyes of Israel became heavy from old age. So it's hard for him to see. And that's why he couldn't differentiate between his sons, Jacob and Esau. But here it just says he was old. So the simple interpretation, when you read it simply, it sounds like he cannot recognize, he doesn't know who the children are. Either he hasn't seen them in a while, or maybe he's getting old and he can't keep track. He's becoming forgetful. But interestingly, that's not what Rashi says. Rashi says, I could be the Rashi, what's bothering Rashi is, it could be what's bothering Rashi is that why does he not recognize them if we have no indication that he can't see? And we have no indication that he's forgetful, because he seems very, very full of strength when he blesses his children. He can remember what happened decades earlier. So it could be that's the issue. But in any case, Rashi says, Mi Eila, who are these? Rashi, he suspects maybe these children are not worthy of blessing. Because what happens is, where were they born? They weren't born amongst the Jewish family. The Jewish family, all their cousins and their uncles and their grandfather, the legacy of Abraham was back in Israel. And here you have two of his grandchildren who grew up amongst the Gentiles, who grew up in Egypt. They probably dressed like Egyptians. They probably spoke like Egyptians. And they showed up. They probably dressed like Egyptians. So he says, who are these? Meaning, what is their character? And Joseph says, they are the children that God blessed me with here. In some ways, what he's telling them, yes, they're here. They look like the Egyptians. They grew up in the Egyptian culture, but yes, they were loyal to Hashem. And then what does Joseph say? What does Jacob say to the father? What does the father say? If so, bring them to me and I'll bless them. And he gives them an amazing blessing. He says, anytime any Jew would want to bench their children, want to bless their children, they'll say, may God make you like Menashe and Ephraim. And why is that? So some people say that's exactly the point. Exactly the point is, because these two boys were raised not in Israel, not with the rest of the family, but they were raised in a distant place. They were raised in a foreign culture, and yet they remained loyal to Judaism. That's the greatest accomplishment, and that's what Jacob was trying to highlight. So maybe when he says, who are these, means what is their character? Because he looks at them externally, right? They speak a different language. They speak English. They don't speak Yiddish, perhaps. Jacob wasn't either speaking Yiddish, but you get the point. They weren't speaking Yiddish. They're speaking English, so they look like a different culture. But Joseph is saying, no, these people are loyal. They're the children that God blessed me with right here. Meaning, right here we could bless them as children of God. And then Jacob understands, and Jacob blesses them and gives them an extraordinary blessing. So it could be that at the end of the Torah, also, the Torah is highlighting how Menashe and Ephraim and their children and their descendants, they are raised and influenced by Joseph. In other words, in a way, more than the other brothers, they were also, in a way, part of the culture of Egypt, because they are in the king's palace where Joseph is, as opposed to the rest of the people, the rest of the Jewish people, which were segregated to some degree. They lived in Goshen, lived in their own country. So it seems in their own region. So it seems like perhaps here you're having a repeat where Menashe and Ephraim have the ability, and their children, to be loyal to Judaism and monotheism and the teachings of their grandparents, even though they're being raised with Joseph, which basically is in the Egyptian capital. So maybe that's the same point being highlighted. Go ahead.
Who's their mother?
So their mothers have to be Egyptians. Their mothers have to be Egyptian. But you have to ask a different question, which is also who are the mothers of all of the Jacob's grandchildren? According to one opinion, the Shvatim, the tribes of Israel, married Canaanite women. Even though the patriarchs would not marry Canaanite women, Jacob's children did, according to one opinion. There's two opinions. One opinion is, see, the problem is there's no record of them going to find other wives. There's no, right? When it comes to Isaac and Jacob, they go back to their hometown of Haran to find a wife. But the children, they were never sent back to find a wife from their native country, from Haran. So they had to marry someone local. So who did they marry? So Rashi has two interpretations. One interpretation is they married Canaanite women. That's probably the most straightforward interpretation. And the other, more exotic interpretation for the Medrash is that they had, in addition to the 12 sons, there were also, each one was born with a twin. And then they marry each other's twins, because remember, they're different mothers. They're 12 sons, one father, with the different mothers. That's not the straightforward interpretation. Straightforward interpretation is they married Canaanite women. Joseph also marries an Egyptian woman. We know exactly who. It says that Pharaoh gives Joseph Osnat was her name, the daughter of Potiphar. Potiphar is probably Potiphar, who was the minister who first purchased Joseph when he came to Egypt. And the whole story with Potiphar's wife. So he becomes the son-in-law of his former master, right? Strange story. But in any case, she's Egyptian, and that's part of the problem. And Rashi over there quotes the Talmud, where he says, Mi Eilach, who are these? Who are these? He says, who's their mother? Where are they married? Where was the ketubah? In other words, was it a kosher marriage? In other words, was it a marriage predicated on holiness and morality. So what's happening with these children? And then Joseph retorts, and Joseph responds and says, no, these are the children that God gave me here, meaning even here, you could be loyal to God. And then Jacob says, okay, so give them to me and I'll bless them. And he gives them an extraordinary blessing, right? So here is the same story again. We're highlighting, perhaps, maybe I'm wrong, I haven't seen this written explicitly, but Neil brought it to our attention. So this is by divine providence, that here we're highlighting a similar point, and that is that even Joseph's grandchildren and great-grandchildren were raised with Joseph, meaning in the Egyptian culture, meaning they retained that ability to be able to be maybe not physically in the warm embrace of the Jewish community, but nevertheless loyal to Judaism. So that's the quality that we need, because we're going to exile, right? We're going to exile. We're going to be distant places. We're not always going to have the comfort of the homogeneous community, right? Go ahead.
It's more effort.
Yes.
To keep your,
Yes.
belief in your.
It takes more effort, and it means that it's part of you, that you're not
like you.
right, and it means that it's internalized. You're not living this way because of external pressures, but this is really who you are, and therefore wherever you go, you're not swayed by the popular culture, because you're anchored in your own spiritual identity.
How do you get all this ability to do this? Because typically you would think that a person needs to learn in order to be able to carry out
Right.
mode of behavior.
Yeah.
You have to learn what is it I'm supposed to do and then live in that way. This is the moral code. This is the opposite of the moral code. I'm choosing the moral code. I'm rejecting the non-moral code.
Right.
But presumably you'd have to know about a moral code to live by if you're going to elect to choose to live by that code.
Yes.
Unless this is just some DNA thing, like a person is delivered great strength, they had nothing to do with it. It was a God-given genetic gift. How does this Ephraim get all of this knowledge to be able to live as a yid in the middle of Mitzrayim?
I would say
having
it's
no yeshiva
Joseph.
to learn it?
I would say it's Joseph. In other words, they got it from their father. Their father, even though he was taken away from his father at the young age of 17 years old, but we know that Jacob loved his son Joseph, and he spent a lot of time studying Torah with him. When the Torah says that Jacob loved Joseph, it says ki ben zkunim. What is ben zkunim? So in modern Hebrew, even biblical Hebrew, but also modern Hebrew, means a son born in old age. Ben zkunim. He was a son born to old age, but he wasn't the only son born into his old age, because Benjamin was younger. So Jacob was even older, right? So therefore, Rashi gives different interpretations, and one interpretation is that in biblical Hebrew, zaken, an elderly person, is synonymous with a wise person. It says
that's wrong.
No, it's right. It says, "V'adarta pnei zaken," you have to honor the elderly. So the Talmud says it's elderly, it's old people, because they have life experience, and that comes with wisdom. But it says it's also a scholar. Zeh shekana chachma. Zaken is an acronym. Old person is the one who acquired wisdom. That's the acronym. Zeh shekana chachma. So Rashi goes back to Joseph and says Joseph was a child of ben zkunim, child of old age. It means he taught him all his wisdom. Because again, old age and wisdom is the same, because you can't have old. The Talmud says there's no wisdom like experience.
When a parent teaches something,
Yeah.
a different kind of
Impact.
Yeah. Especially if they spend time.
Yeah.
With a child, then it's a different impact also.
Right. I would also add, especially in young age. Young age, kids are very, you say he was only 17. How much could he learn? He couldn't get his PhD in Judaism. Yeah. But at a younger age, that's when your character is formed, and that's when your memories are formed, and that's when you can have a very deep impact on a person. So we're struggling with which school to send our son Isaac to, this, that, and the other. And Machani spoke to Rabbi Shmuley Friedman, who's a teacher, and he said the most important age is the younger ages. Comes third grade, send them wherever you want, doesn't matter. First grade, second grade, third grade, that's where the younger the person is, that's where you have to be the most careful. So the Rebbe had a metaphor for this. The metaphor was that when you plant a tree, so you have a tree that's 100 years old, and you come and you give the tree a little bang. It's going to survive, nothing's going to happen. When you have a seed You take a little hammer, and you give a little bang to the seed, it's going to affect the whole tree, right? It's going to have an impact on the whole tree. So in other words, when the child is very young, you have to be very careful because every little scratch could have impact. When you reach my age, so you get hit by the tree, no, you'll survive. So that's the idea. So he was only 17 when he was taken away, but he was very impacted in a very deep way. And to his credit, Joseph, even though if you think about it, it's really remarkable and probably surprising that he would be able to remain loyal. Remember, we know the end of the story, but he wouldn't know the end of the story. He didn't think he's ever going to be reunited with his parents. He never thought he'll be freed from slavery. He could have never known all of this. And yet, you see, he was a moral person. He did not want to sin against God and against his master and therefore he rejected the advances of his master's wife. He was very, very righteous, even though he did not have an external community to support that or environment that came from within himself. So that's something that you see that is remarkable about Joseph. And perhaps the Torah, it's very good to know that Joseph saw nachas from his grandchildren. It's a great thing. But why we keep saying it, why we have to emphasize, he saw 3 generations or 4 generations, and then it says that, and they were raised on his knees. But what that means is perhaps that he's raising them in the palace. And he's sort of passing on this skill set. You don't have to be in the ghetto to be Jewish, right? You don't have to be surrounded with a specific environment to be able to maintain the values of that environment. And maybe it's easier, but like Seth says, it takes much more work, but it's much more profound if you could maintain it from within. Now, this is very much related to our parsha, the parsha that we're reading this Shabbat. There's a very strange thing happens. What happens in this week's parsha is that we're going to read this parsha, so it's related because it's related. So that happens in this week's parsha. So by the way, the last two portions, it's a double portion. Both those portions, it's all about it mentions Joseph many times. So it's all the children of Joseph. You have the children of Joseph. I don't want to go into that right now, but the bottom line is this. The bottom line is 2 tribes come to Moses and they say, we don't want to go into the land of Israel. We want to remain east of the Jordan because east of the Jordan is a place of cattle, is a place of pasture, and we have a tremendous amount of cattle. And Moshe first is upset. He's afraid that the people are going to be dissuaded from going into the land of Israel, just like the spies 40 years earlier, and he's very upset. Eventually, they say, no, we're not like the spies. The 2 tribes say, we're going to go first in battle. We're going to lead the rest of the Jewish people in battle to conquer the lands west of the Jordan, on the West Bank. That you read in the BBC, West Bank, they mean a part of Israel. The entire Israel is the West Bank of the Jordan. And we get both parts. We have the East Bank and the West Bank historically. So the bottom line is the 2 tribes say, we're going to go and we're going to lead the people into Israel. So we're not afraid of battle. We'll be first in battle. But after we conquer the rest of the land, we'll get the land east of the Jordan. And Moshe says, okay, a deal's a deal. If you want to do it that way, we'll make the deal. But he's probably not super excited about it anyway. But then he does something surprising. What he does is, these are the 2 tribes that asked for it, Reuven and Gad. Then he does something surprising. He says, you know what, Menashe, we're going to switch, we're going to cut the tribe of Menashe in half. We're going to put half the tribe of Menashe east of the Jordan, half of the tribe of Menashe west of the Jordan. Now the question is, why is he putting a half a tribe on the other side of the Jordan, outside of Israel proper? They didn't request it. In fact, Moshe was initially upset that the 2 tribes wanted to be east of the Jordan. So why is he, on his own initiative, putting a half a tribe east of the Jordan? So that's a big question. It doesn't say the answer explicitly. Some people would say the answer is like this. The answer is he's afraid that because there's a geographical border, the Jordan River, it's the 2 kingdoms, the 2 tribes will sort of break away because then there's a geographical boundary, and there was a fear that they'll sort of break away from the Jewish people. So what does he do? He takes one tribe, divides it in half, and they serve as the bridge, because if your cousins and your brothers on the other side of the Jordan, then you keep going back and forth because half your tribe is on one side, half your tribe is on the other side. Tribal connections were very powerful. It was a tribal society, and then that's how you bridge both sides of the Jordan. Okay, now we understand why he did that. Very nice, very logical. The question is, why does he choose the tribe of Menashe? He's got 10 tribes to choose from. Why Menashe? So here comes an interesting interpretation. Menashe is the son of Joseph. What does Joseph tell you? You can be distant and remain close. You can raise your children in Egypt and remain loyal to Judaism. You could be east of the Jordan, farthest point from the temple, outside of the holiness of Israel, and yet remain loyal to the values of Israel. So Menashe represents that ability, both in this parsha and the end of Genesis, but also in the end of Numbers, which is what we're going to read this Shabbos. So I think we can make that connection. And perhaps I like to say, in some ways, the end of Numbers is the end of the Torah, because the fifth book is Mishnah Torah. It's the repetition, it's the retelling. But in some ways, the first four books is the entire Torah. So in a way, the end of the Torah, the last point the Torah is telling you is, be like Menashe, bring the holiness of Israel, extend the holiness of Israel even to outside of Israel. And we're living outside of Israel, so this is meaningful for us, more than the people living in Jerusalem right now. Okay, it's easy to live in Jerusalem. Like Seth says, it's easy to live in Jerusalem. Let's say you be Jewish in Greenwich. That's powerful. Yes, please.
My parents were never religious. They went the opposite direction. I mean, the only thing they did was support financially.
That's a big thing.
And yet I grew up, I am here, like, I'm really almost the opposite. I'm the opposite. How does that, this is the same kind of thing. How
Right.
does that?
I don't know.
I think that he was blessed.
Yeah.
Joseph, God, like, I really believe that.
Yeah.
He was touched. For lack of a better way to put it. You know, by
I think
God.
he gets divine providence. He's certainly a successful person. Successful, the Torah is the only person in the five books of Moses that the Torah refers to as a successful person. Hashem is with him, and that expresses itself physically, but also spiritually. That he's successful in raising his children in the challenging environment. It's not so simple. In any environment, it's hard to raise children and hard to pass your values to your children. Very difficult thing to do. It's almost out of your hands in a way. You need a lot of divine providence. It's nothing you can do. You can try as hard as you want.
Maybe
And
God planned it to be like this, that he was going to separate. I
think
this is how he got it.
it's almost like if you do a good deed, God blesses you that you have that ability to do it again. So Joseph himself exemplifies this quality, and now that quality is passed on to his children. But I'm just saying that the story of Menashe and the story of Joseph and the story of Menashe is more relevant to people living outside of Israel than the people living in Israel, because that's the idea that we're like Joseph in the sense that we're living in an environment that's different than the values of Judaism, and the culture is different, right? Even if you're very secular in Israel, the most secular person, but just the calendar and just the holidays and just the fact that there's so many Jewish people in one place, and the holidays, and instead of New Year's vacation, you have Rosh Hashanah vacation, right? So it's embedded in the culture, and you're living a Jewish lifestyle, even if you're trying not to, right? It's almost by default, just by the virtue of living amongst 8 million Jews, right? And then when you're living outside of Israel, that's a choice, and that's different, and that's more difficult, and then you have to put in the effort, because naturally it's not going to happen. And that's the quality of Joseph, and that's the quality of Menashe, and it's being celebrated at the end of the first book and at the end of the fourth book, which is in some ways the conclusion of the whole Torah, the takeaway of the whole Torah.
Is there a Hasidic view on these? Because I know that there's a Hasidic view on many things. Like
On what?
on body parts, like the knees.
The knees,
Why is it
berech.
Because that's where blessing comes
Yeah,
from.
so berech is bracha. No, bracha. Everyone knows what the word blessing is. Now, no one's sure exactly what the etymology of bracha. What is the etymology? It's a very important word in Judaism, certainly rabbinic Judaism, bracha. But what's the etymology of the word? So there's different interpretations. I could think of three. I'm not going to bore you with all three, because then we're never going to get to the conclusion of the book, and we're going to have bagels next week too, which is not good. No, I'm kidding. So one interpretation is that bracha comes from the word berech, which is knee, and the reason for that is to kneel is to lower yourself down, right? You say kneel is to the knees. And what is a bracha? Bracha, Kabbalistically, is drawing down. When you say Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you, Lord, heal the sick, blessed are you, Lord, bless the years, all the blessings that we say in the Amidah. We're saying, draw down the infinite light of God into this world, and that would result in blessing. And the blessing would be to heal the sick, to the produce should grow, and all the other blessings that we bless, what we ask for in the Amidah. But the idea of bracha is drawing down. Berech knees is more drawing down. So if I had to dabble in homiletics, I would say that Joseph is like the knee drawing down the holiness of Israel to Egypt. right? If I had to make that connection, if they would give me a poetic license, I'm still looking for one. I'm still looking for someone to give me the license, give me the training. But if I had some poetic license, I would say that yeah, the knees of Joseph is very connected to knees because the knee is drawing down, and that's why bracha, blessing, is drawing down, and kneeling is drawing down. And you could be great in heaven, but let's say you come down here. Let's see what you can do down here in this world. That's why the soul comes down into this world, because in a way, the soul coming down into this world is like Joseph being in Egypt. You come into a challenging environment. You come into an environment that is inconsistent with your values, and then you have to thrive. First of all, survive, and then thrive in that environment, and grow from that experience. So Joseph is very much related to every Jew, a soul descended into the world, but especially to the Jews living outside of Israel, at least temporarily. Okay, that is verse 23. We're making progress. We only have to get to verse 26, which means we only have 3 verses left. Let's see if we can get 28 minutes. Okay, hit the time, hit the clock. We can't go overtime because we have to go to do another mitzvah. I have to go do another mitzvah, make a minyan at 11 o'clock. So can't go overtime, but okay. Okay, Joseph says to his brothers, verse 24, Joseph said to his brothers, I am going to die. Right? If you look at the ArtScrolls page 289, let me share the screen.
This is Anochi.
Anochi met. Yeah, that's interesting. Anochi is more formal as opposed to ani.
Met is a present tense. It's not a going to die.
Anochi met. Yeah, means it's imminent. Meaning it's imminent.
I die.
Anochi met. It could be I am dead theoretically, but it means I'm going to die. It means it's imminent. They translate I'm going to die.
Shouldn't it say Yamut?
Amut, Aleph makes it future tense, but that could mean sometime when something is imminent, you could talk about it in the present tense, even though it didn't happen yet. Right? If I say I'm leaving, say I'm leaving at 12 o'clock. You're going to leave. Leaving is present. I'm not gonna say I'm going to leave at 12. I could say I'm going to leave at 12. I could also say I'm leaving at 12.
Well,
Leaving is present tense.
means it's pretty close.
It's pretty close, but I'm saying, yeah, but in the Hebrew it says, Anochi met, I'm dead, I'm dying. I'm dying. But you're still alive. I'm dying. But it means if it's Anochi met means dead. Could also mean dying.
It doesn't say I'm about to die.
It doesn't say about. No. In the English, they translate I'm going to die in the thing on the screen. In this book, they translate I'm about to die. Yeah, so they say about. They say about to die, meaning that it's imminent. That's probably about is probably a better translation. Here on Chabad.org, and the Mitzvah Chumash, they write, I'm going to die, which is going as future, but about to die means it's imminent. Yeah.
To die, he means
We're all going to die.
it could mean right away.
Yeah, but it could mean in 100 years too. That's what I'm saying. It could mean Anochi met means I'm dying, meaning that's imminent. So I think the about to die, I think is better. It's more imminent. I'm now, what does he tell his brothers? He says, I'm about to die. God will surely remember you. So that's a very interesting idea. We're going to talk about that. Pakod yifkod elokim etchem. Double language. Pakod yifkod. Remembering, he will remember you. When in the English translation, when they can translate double in Hebrew, when you want to emphasize, you say something twice. You say pakod yifkod. Remember, you shall remember. In other words, you say the verb, but you also say the verb in the form of the general. Remember, he will remember. You say that's how you do it. We'll get to that in a second. But go ahead.
So how come it doesn't say Zakar?
Oh, so pakod is a different word for zachar. We'll get to that in a second, hopefully. But it's not the only place it happens in the Torah. Hashem pakad et Sarah. God remembered Sarah. It happens in the Torah. Pakod is to remember. Zachor is also remember. We have talked about the difference. And he says, and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob. So he's giving them hope. Calls his brothers, and what is he giving them? Verse 24, he's giving them hope. He says, God will remember you and bring you out from this land to Abraham, to bring you out from this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, so that's hope. And then verse 25, it's a request. And Joseph adjured the children of Israel, saying, God will surely remember you. Again, pakod yifkod elokim etchem. I was saying that that in English they translate surely, meaning to emphasize, but in the Hebrew it doesn't say surely, it doesn't say sure, it just says the verb twice. Remember, he will remember. So you see, that formula is important. It was repeated in verse 24. It was said in verse 24, repeated in verse 25. Pakod yifkod, remember, he shall remember, he will remember. And then he says, and you shall take up my bones out of here. He makes the Jewish people swear that he's going to take that they are going to take his bones and bring it back to the land of Israel. He makes them swear. There's a very interesting interpretation that it says, "Shall take." You don't have it in the English in the then you must bring my bones up here out of here. If you look at the Hebrew, oh no, no. That's a different commentary. That's the commentary where they actually do it. Where they actually do it when they leave Egypt, there it says the story is reiterated, and there it says that Joseph makes the children of Israel swear. That says the Jewish people took the bones of Joseph because he made them swear that you will take up my bones with you. So there Rashi has a beautiful interpretation. What is with you? With his brothers. So that would imply that they have to take Joseph and his brothers. The descendants 200 years later would have to take Joseph and his brothers, and therefore all the tribes' bones were taken back to Israel, according to Rashi, according to the Medrash. But what's happening here, he's making the Jewish people swear, and he's making them swear. He's making them swear to make their children swear, right? Because it wasn't just that. Again, Rashi says that in Beshalach, in the book of Exodus, where they actually do it. It says hashpeah hishpeah, swear he made them swear. Again, double language. Why the double language? There Rashi says he made them swear that they're going to make their children swear. In other words, it's perpetual over the generations until the Exodus that they'll bring Joseph out. Now, why does Joseph feel entitled to make them swear this, right? I come to you, I make you swear that you're going to do my request. Who are you? Like, you're my brother. So what? So you could say, he supported them over all these years, so they owe him a favor. Okay, but there's something deeper. Joseph can make them swear because he's entitled to ask for this request because they are responsible for the fact that he was in Egypt. How did he get here? They sold him to Egypt. So therefore, he could say, you're making you swear, and you'll make your children swear that eventually, when the time comes, when the Exodus comes, you will take me out. But he's entitled to ask for that, is because in a way they are responsible to take him out because they brought him. So that's why he's not like apologizing for this request because he's entitled to that request. I thought that was interesting.
See,
go ahead.
It says, but God will surely remember you. So that but is like, he was carrying them. He felt he was carrying them for these years.
Right.
And they felt.
Right. They felt.
So somehow that bothers me, that word. I know.
Yeah. So the truth of the matter is that in Hebrew, the word is vav. It's a letter vav, and vav can mean a lot of things. It can mean but the more common is vav achibur, just a connection. It could be more common would be and, right? Are you looking at verse 24 or 25? Which verse are you looking at? 24. So I'm going to die.
But
the Elohim. I could say and Elohim. Vav could be but it could much more common is and. Vav is a connector.
Okay,
so in other words, I'm going to die. Yeah, I'm going to die. In other words, I'm going to die in a way. Right now, their protector was Joseph. And in fact, once Joseph dies and the generation dies, they're going to, and when you turn the page, the slavery develops in a matter of.
Joseph was afraid. That's why he wanted them to take the
right
and do it because he knew he was carrying everything.
Right.
And now he said, well, I'm going to try to give my brother,
right. In a way, I look
make up for it.
Right. So giving them an opportunity to teshuva, that's nice, right? That's nice because they caused them to come. They caused them to come, and they caused them to come down to Egypt, and now that he's giving them an opportunity to correct that. That's good, right? Sometimes you offend me so deeply in a way. Okay, I don't want to.
Think he had resentment against his brothers, and this was a way to get rid of that.
I don't want to open that up because we did it last week. No, but I do want to say that in a way, no, I don't. In a way, the greatest thing you can do for someone is help them correct their mistake, right? Because Joseph until now never gave them a path to repentance. Basically, he said, "I don't hold a grudge." Right? We talked about this last week at great length. He didn't forgive. He just moved on. They said, "We're sorry, take us as slaves. We're so sorry. Please, almost like, please be upset at us." You know what I mean? They couldn't understand how come Joseph is not taking revenge, right? So, but Joseph is not taking. He's basically saying, "I'm moving on. That's all. I'm not thinking about it." But if you're the person that committed the wrong, Yeah, it's very nice that the guy's moving on, but you have your own guilt. You have to, what about what I did, right? The judge says, I don't want to think about it. Okay. In a way, the greatest kindness you could do to somebody, someone who offends you, is give them a path to correct it, right? Your child offends you, your spouse offends you, it doesn't matter who, right? So you could say, you know what, I'm not thinking about it. But that's not closure, that's not healing. Healing would be, okay, you know what? Buy me a nice coffee and I'll be happy. Right? It doesn't have to be something big, but it means do this for me. And you know what? And that's I'm letting you appease me, so to speak. Right? I'm giving you a path for forgiveness. Do something and I'll be happy. Right? So in a way, that's the greatest gift. So in a way, what Joseph is telling them is, do this for me. Take me back to Israel. In a way, that's closing that's bringing closure, and that's gonna be healing for them, because they know, you know what, we did something wrong, but we have a path to bring the healing, even if we ourselves are not going to be able to take Joseph back, because we ourselves are not going to merit to live to the redemption, but we're going to make our children take the oath, and that's how we're going to we're going to sort of atone or bring closure to what we did, to the mistake we did. So I think that's actually very kind. So thank you, Seth, for that, because I think it's kind when someone offends you, give them a path, what they can do to make you feel good, as opposed to saying, you know what, I'm just ignoring it, because then maybe you moved on, but did they move on? And clearly in the story we saw last week, the brothers didn't move on. Joseph moved on, but now maybe he's giving them an opportunity to do something, take an action, and that would bring healing. I think that's beautiful. Go ahead, Neil.
Can you connect? So when Jacob's on his deathbed, he also makes his son swear. Doesn't just ask.
Yeah.
He makes them swear.
Yeah, he makes them swear that he's going to take them out of that they're going to take him out of Egypt immediately. And here Joseph is similar, but Joseph doesn't say, take me out of Egypt right away. He says, take me out of Egypt when God will bring you out of Egypt. That's a little bit different. The question is, how come? Why the change? So the simple answer is because Joseph understood that Joseph could use his influence on Pharaoh to let them take Jacob back. But now, once Joseph dies, people are powerless. They're not going to be able to persuade Pharaoh to let them take Joseph out. Right? Joseph is a national hero, right? So that's the first point. But I would say another point is, yeah, go ahead.
So two things for that. In yeshivish talk, they always say bli neder, but this is neder.
This is a neder.
Neder mode.
This is a neder mode, not double neder. Hashbeya hashbiya. Bli neder means that because an oath is so severe. So if I say I make a commitment, you know what, tomorrow we're going to go jogging. I'm going to jog a mile. So maybe that's an oath. The oath is very serious. I may decide not to jog the mile. So I say bli neder without the force of a vow. That's without the force of a vow. Bli neder. Yeah, you ever heard of the term?
Yeah.
Your father always said bli neder. Could we go biking? Bli neder.
I always got the thought of if only,
Yeah, so bli neder means I hope to be able to do it.
oh,
But it's not a commitment. That's the point. It's not a
You're
commitment.
giving yourself a clause.
Right,
in the
get out.
statement that if you don't do it, that your word is not bunk. Like if you say,
Right.
I'm gonna go biking with you, and then you don't show up, then your word is questioned. Like, are you good for your word or not?
Right.
When Drew says something and he doesn't follow through on it, it's a serious kind of situation, because he's like, Jew, is the word that he says is in a continuation of God in the world, and so that we say bli neder, you're giving yourself, a clause saying, if I don't show up, I'm not taking a vow to show up, I'm just,
yeah,
and I'm giving myself an out clause. It's a protective mechanism if you don't know if you can show up to a particular.
Kind of like we'll see.
No, so it's not like halavai. Halavai is if only. That's halavai. But this is I want to do it.
he knows Yiddish.
Yeah.
So what's the difference then?
Oh, but here is a vow. This is a serious matter. He didn't want to give him an out. This is a contract that with no out. There's no escape.
Say bli neder.
Right. This is made him. Oh,
what's the
by the
difference?
way, let me just conclude with Joseph with Jacob. Initially, Joseph didn't want to take the oath.
Right.
Joseph says, "Okay, I'll do it." And then there's another verse, and he says, "Swear to me," and he swears to him. So he didn't rely on just the word of Joseph. Jacob didn't rely, because he understood that it's going to be a big commitment to be able to influence Pharaoh. It's a big ask. It's a big ask, and it's so important that you don't want an escape clause in the contract. There's an oath. There's no bli neder, no monkey business.
What's the difference between neder and yishva?
Neder and a shvua. Neder is there's different interpretations of the etymology of the word and also the halachic significance. I'm just going to say that more of a Kabbalistic interpretation that the word hashbeah comes from the word sheva, savea, seven, satiated. And the idea is that an oath is also an empowerment. Because what the word for oath means, I feel like I can't do it. You asked me to make a commitment. It says too big of a commitment. It said take an oath. Take an oath on one hand. Oath is very severe. Oath would mean if you violate it, it's a big sin. Why is it a sin? It's a sin because when you take an oath, you're opening up a new channel of possibility. You're basically opening up. You're getting a new possibility. You're opening up a new channel of a flow from Hashem, giving you the energy to do so. And therefore, if you don't do it, that's why it's so severe. So mystically, the word shvua comes from the word sova, to satiate. You make an oath, meaning you're opening yourself up and you say, Hashem, give me the power to do so. And Hashem gives you the power to do so. And now you have no out because you know you could do it. You know you've been empowered. And if I don't do it, it's my own failing. It's not that I didn't have the power to do it. If I take an oath, means I believe that Hashem's given me the power, and that itself opens up the flow, and I've been satiated, and now I can do it. And if I don't do it, that's why it's so severe, because not only did I violate my word, I also misused those additional. I misused that additional energy that Hashem gave me, empowering me to do it, and I misuse it. So that is the hashbeah hishbiyah. Okay, that's
What's the difference between that and neder?
So neder is more like neder's a little bit different.
Binds you, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the etymology of neder.
Because Jacob does a neder
Vayidar Yaakov neder lemor. Yeah,
when he crosses the river.
yeah. I have to think about that. What exactly is the difference in neder and shvua? It's written about. It's a subject. It's a topic. It's out there. We'll have to look into
So
that.
how long was the time when Joseph said this, and God started to remember them?
It took a long time. It was probably, I don't know the exact, maybe we have an exact date. I'm not sure we do. We know from when they entered Egypt until they left was 210 years.
So they
We know
didn't
that-
bring his bones.
At least it's a little bit less because we know that Joseph died, that Jacob died 17 years later. So it's 93. So it's 193 years. It's a little less than 100. It's less than 193 years. I don't know exactly. Yeah, maybe at least 130 years. I think it's Kuflam 130. I don't remember the exact dates. It's at least 130 years from when the slavery begins, from when the death of Joseph. Well, it's probably more than 130. It's probably around the 150 years from the death of Joseph until the actual Exodus. So but they keep it. The Torah tells us about how the Jewish people, Moshe specifically, they carried Joseph's bones, fulfilling the promise. By the way, the end of the book of Joshua, which in some sense, every time I say this, I get the chills, which in some sense is the conclusion of the Torah, because the Mishnah says, that the Medrash says that if the people wouldn't sin, the Torah should be concluded at the book of Joshua. Because think about it, what is the Torah? Torah is, we got the Torah, it took us out of Egypt, we got the Torah, we came to Israel. So Moshe didn't get us into Israel, but Joshua got us into Israel. That's the end of days. That's Mashiach. Okay, we sinned, so it was delayed. But the end of Joshua is sort of the unit. What's the last verse of the book of Joshua? The bones of Joseph, with the Jewish people took out of Egypt, they buried in Shechem. And Rashi says he was kidnapped from Shechem and he was returned to Shechem. Okay, so you get full circle. So this is an important theme of bringing Joseph back to Israel. Is very symbolic in the Torah. We read it at the end of the first book. We also read it at the end of the book of Joshua, which in some sense is a conclusion of the Torah. And it could be, it emphasizes more than Joseph as himself, but it's also the Jewish people. Joseph is an embodiment of the Jewish people, that they get sent away, they get sent into slavery, they fall very low, but they do triumph and they do survive and thrive and eventually come back and reach the full circle. So that's I think is very nice.
This is interesting thing, because on Wikipedia, or no, Chabad.org, it cites and says exactly, I don't know exactly, 139 years after Joseph's passing, the Jews were finally freed from their bondage in Egypt.
Okay, I said 150, which is 11 years off. Yeah, they're right.
And
I'm
the
wrong.
other thing it says is that they wanted to know, like Moses didn't know where Joseph was buried.
Yeah,
So he turned to Sarah, daughter of Asher, and niece of Joseph, who had been blessed with long life. In the words of Thomas, it says, And how did Moses know where Joseph was buried? It was said that Sarah, the daughter of Asher, remained in that generation. Moses went to her and asked, "Do you know where Joseph is buried?" She replied, "The Egyptians fashioned a metal casket for him and set it in the Nile, that its water will be blessed." Moses stood on the bank of the Nile and said, "Joseph, Joseph, the time regarding which God promised that our Redeemer was arrived, as well as the time of your oath that you administered on the people of Israel. If you present yourself good, if not, we are absolved from your oaths." Immediately
Right.
Joseph coffin floated up.
Yes, that just represents the idea that it wasn't so simple. The Egyptians didn't make it easy. They took the Joseph's bones, they put it in the box, and they dropped it into the Nile because they felt that he'll bless the Nile. So it wasn't so simple for the Jewish people to keep this oath. And maybe if they hadn't made the oath, they wouldn't go through that effort. Everyone's busy packing the bags to leave Egypt. The Torah says Moshe himself was the only one. All the people were distracted. Moshe himself was the only one who that's what it says. Moshe took the bones of Joseph with him, and
3 days looking.
but he himself, I mean, everyone else was too busy. So I'm just emphasizing that after all those years, it's not the first thing on your head to worry about Joseph's bones. But for Moshe, he understood this was important.
Go.
We're not going to finish the whole book today. In other words, we're not going to finish everything I wanted to say. Another locks, but before the locks, so maybe we'll go to the last verse. We'll finish it, and then we'll go back next week, and then we'll have at least coffee. Maybe we'll have locks. We'll see. But let me listen. If everybody wants locks, I'm going to be eating locks every week. We used to do breakfast years and years ago, and then no one ate it. So I said, "Listen, I'm not bringing breakfast if no one eats it. But if we have some commitments to eating locks every week, we're going to do locks every week." Lena there.
You ever hear the joke? You know why you can't keep a Jew in jail?
Why?
He's not.
Oh yeah, that was what they said that. Oh, your kids, they said that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go to the last verse. We'll do the siyum, but it's the 3 weeks and we need extra joy. So we'll do the siyum, and then we'll see what happens next week. But I want to read the last verse, and I want to say chazak, chazak, chazek, be strong, and then I want to comment on this verse. Beautiful teaching of the Rebbe that I alluded to earlier, but here we go. Verse 26. Oh, Seth, thank you for coming right back for the last verse of the book. Just in time. Verse 26. And Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and they embalmed him, and he was placed into the coffin in Egypt. And like we say, let's say it together. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong, and may we be strengthened. Mazel tov. Thank you all for joining for this beautiful journey. We're going to start the next book, God willing, either today or next week or the week after. Okay, now we have to internalize all the teachings, and Hashem should give us many long, healthy, happy years and decades to continue learning Torah. A little bit. I still have 3-4 minutes. I want to finish a minute or two early, but I still have 3-4 minutes to talk about this verse. The Rebbe asked a very interesting question. If I were, they say always end on a positive note. That's what it says. So even in let's say tractates of Talmud that are sort of sad stories, the last thing, just put in a verse that's uplifting. Okay. 26 is not that uplifting. Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and they embalmed him, and he was placed into a coffin in Egypt. Okay, that's a little. Now, says the Rebbe, what happens if you would switch verse 26 and 25? That would be nice. Joseph died, and then end with verse 25. Before he died, he made the people promise and say, God will surely remember you, and you shall take up my bones out of here. Now that's uplifting. Yeah, we're in Egypt now, but we have hope. We're gonna leave Egypt. So with just switching verse 24, 25, and 26 sounds like it's sort of a little edit. You would be able to be consistent with the value the Torah always says to conclude with something good. So the Rebbe spoke about this at great length. This was, I think, in 1987. Maybe I was there. Maybe that's fine. I could have been there. I don't know. I don't remember it. Certainly not. But the Rebbe said like this. This is very beautiful. So the premise is the end has to be positive. Okay, so get my verses straight here. So the question was, well, switch it. Verse 25 is far more uplifting than verse 26. The Rebbe says, no. Maybe verse 26 is far more uplifting than verse 25. Well, how so? If you're a Jew and you're in Egypt, and Jacob was brought back to Israel, and Joseph was brought back to Israel, how do you feel? You feel abandoned. The fact that you have a righteous person like Joseph with you in Egypt, that is the encouragement. And that you know that Hashem will take, Joseph made the promise that they'll take him back, and Joseph was a righteous person, and Joseph's life itself embodies this point. And no matter how low you fall, you're going to rise, and you're going to thrive, and you're going to excel.
That's what the but means.
Go ahead.
That's what I
Yeah.
just said.
So the fact that Joseph is in Egypt, so in other words, the greatest comfort you can give to that generation sitting here, and granted, you say, well, I would rather Joseph be in Egypt. Yeah. But if you were a Jew living in Egypt, verse 26 is the greatest comfort that Joseph was with them in Egypt. And that ever spoke about this, it was his father-in-law was named Yosef, sixth Rebbe. And he said the fact that you have righteous people buried in the diaspora outside of Israel is the encouragement for the people living in the diaspora that they have a righteous person next to them and they could learn from his message, learn from his legacy, and be inspired by the legacy. And ultimately, in that case, know that God is going to take them out, just like Joseph made them promise, but almost like the way Joseph's life story embodies this truth, that you could fall very low, but God will ultimately remember you. And that's why the greatest emphasis, now it's so beautiful, because the question seemed like a beautiful question. But now once you switch the lens to the lens of the Jew living in Egypt, the greatest thing you can tell the Jew is the final verses of the final 3 words of the book. And he was placed into a coffin in Egypt, which to us sounds heavy and morbid, but to them was uplifting. So be strong, and may be strengthened. Thank you all for joining. Wonderful day.
Yasha
Yasha Koach.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Beautiful. Thank you, Mark, for joining. Thank you, Bob, for joining. Yes. Yeah, if I sense that that the people are going to eat it every week, we're going to have it every week. So I would be careful.
Have a lot of that.
Okay, so you have to eat lunch too. We have to eat lunch too now, you know? Okay, thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful
you.
day. We should meet each other in good health.
One more lock stroke.
Yes.
And this